Us humans are social creatures, but at the same time we're wary of people that we don't know. And this conflict in our natures can be best seen in the way that we space ourselves apart. Let me give you an example. Let's say you go to the cinema and you go to sit in a row where somebody you don't know is already sitting. You won't sit next to that person, and you won't sit in the aisle seats that are furthest away from them. What you'll do is you'll sit in the seats that are an equal distance between the aisle seats and the person you don't know, thereby sating your primitive need for company while satisfying your wariness of strangers. Now, I've seen this psychological social rule of spacing working in all types of places. Work seminars, football matches, Alcoholics Anonymous, the list goes on. But there is one exception to the rule, and that's standing at the urinals in the gents' toilets. In those circumstances, us menfolk stand as far apart as possible, and the only limits to the maximum distance you should be apart are the physical dimensions of the toilet itself. But before I go any further on the topic of toilets, there is something you should know, and that's that I have not gone to any great length, or indeed any length, in order to study people's toilet habits, and these are just things that I happen to have picked up while answering the call of nature. I definitely don't hang around the loos any longer than I have to, and neither do I excessively visit the toilets. In fact, I've trained my bladder to a capacity of 4 pints. Not to spend any longer at the bar, that's just a bonus. It's actually because I resent the guilt reflex that makes me give money to the bloke who hangs out in the toilets guarding the soap and towels. I don't have anything against you, but I have been able to wash myself since the age of 2, and after a quick couple of trials, my ability to pull women isn't noticeably improved with a quick squirt of aftershave. Now, as well as maintaining the maximum physical distance possible, the other key unwritten rule is that you on no account talk to another person sharing the toilet with you. In a sort of quasi-ritual, you unzip in silence, take aim, concentrate upon your grip, and then stare at the wall tiles in front of you. Which, now I come to think about it, actually explains the disproportionately large number of pub conversations I've had on the topic of grouting. Anyway, once in a while somebody breaks the sacred man pact of silence, and I like to refer to these weirdos as social toilet deviants, or STDs for short. And who wants to get an STD while they're using the toilet? Let me expand upon that for you ladies who are fortunate enough not to have to share a liquid waste trough. Imagine that you're doing something that you'd normally do in private, something that makes you feel quite vulnerable. For example, massaging cocoa butter into your thigh to prevent cellulite. Now, this time imagine that you're doing it in the company of strangers. The last thing you want to do in that situation is start speaking to the person next to you. It's uncomfortable and invites unwanted glancing. And that's exactly how I feel when somebody tries to strike up a conversation with me when Morgan Jr. is exposed. The last toilet talker I came across was a drunk who tried to start up a conversation with me about one of the women in my group. It went something along the lines of, "Your mate, she's fit, ain't she? She's seen anyone? Put in a good word for me." Now, while quizzing me about a friend's availability for dating may be acceptable in other circumstances, doing so while I'm tackle out and creating a golden rainbow into a porcelain basin isn't likely to get you a recommendation from me. And did I mention that he was taking more than 3 shakes to finish off? No? Maybe I should have started with that. It's a more extreme example. Normally the conversations with toilet nutters revolve around football scores, the number of attractive women out that night, or a detailed analysis of why in this economic climate Britain should clear its debts by selling off the Isle of Wight. Whatever the topic, casual conversation with the person standing next to you when urinating is wrong, and there are no acceptable circumstances under which it should happen. Now, men are very competitive, and while we may not be verbally communicating in the toilet, we are still establishing our social status. And by that I don't mean Twitter updates. What I mean is that when urinating in the company of men, a strong stream is an alpha male demonstration of power and a healthy prostate. It's the logical extension of when you're young and you compete over how high you can get your golden arc. Certainly when I was at school, if you called somebody vertically challenged, it had a very different meaning to the current connotation. But unfortunately a powerful stream is not always appropriate, as the designers of some urinals, designers who I presume require a medical examination involving a rubber glove, seem to have incorporated a parabola into the shape of the urinal bowl, and this can cause an embarrassing splashback if your stream is too powerful. So to prevent unwanted trouser stains, you have to moderate your flow. It's not all bad though, because if you can't demonstrate your pressure washer-like abilities, flow moderation does have the consolation of making others think that you've got an extremely large bladder capacity, which of course is another great source of pride among men. But pressure moderation isn't easy, especially after a few pints, and if you get it wrong, you end up with damp shoes. Which is why I prefer to use trough urinals. You can shoot straight down those things at full power without fear of splashback. Although that's providing there's nobody else that wants to use the urinal with you, because if there's one thing that Ghostbusters has taught us, it's that you don't cross the streams. Along with proximity, talking weirdos and flow control, another of the trials we menfolk face when using public toilets are the adverts that you get above the urinals. I used to think that they were a good thing, to distract the weirdos from talking at you. But most of the time these adverts are scantily clad women in evocative poses. Now I know that there's a market for that kind of thing, but in my mind, urinating and sex are mutually exclusive. Alternatively, you get adverts for rugby and football matches. And what's wrong with that, I hear you ask? Well, I don't want to be staring at pictures of muscular men in shorts while I'm holding my penis either. And recently, there has been a trend for these loo adverts to take on an even more disturbing context. And these are the adverts that tell you about all the things that can go wrong with your tackle. Adverts like, "Are you worried about impotence? I wasn't, but I am now." Or a sexy female body that's wearing panties that have the slogan, "Can you tell if I've got gonorrhea?" That kind of thing plays upon your mind for a long while afterwards, and you can't help but bring it up as a topic of conversation when you get back from the toilet. Yeah, that date didn't go very well. Anyway, throughout this chronicle I've only been talking about the issues faced by men when using public toilets. Now I will admit I have been into the ladies' loos, but it's only ever been the result of the normal gender signs having been replaced with confusing foreign naming conventions or obscure pictorial representations. And every time I've discovered my mistake, I've always gotten out of there as quickly as possible. So I don't know if you women face similar problems to us menfolk when urinating. But in my humble opinion, girls, having to occasionally queue to use the toilet is a small price to pay for your own private cubicle and a toilet floor not awash with used beer.